Hello everybody, welcome. Here we are. Well, I've just managed to get these pots in from outside. These are all bone dry pots I've got here in front of me, and I've had them out most of the day, and suddenly I was going to actually do this clip outside, but suddenly I heard the pitter-patter of raindrops, and of course that's not what we want, because bone dry pots, as you know, they water mixes very well, doesn't it, with bone dry pots. So yeah, let's just grab the camera off the tripod a sec, and let's just talk about these very briefly. As you can see, yes, we've got quite a number there of GP bowls, and then we've got GP bowls that are pushed together, that have got little strap handles across, the same as my smaller, what I call double bowls, but these are really a veggie bowl. I've got one of these, which is a new diversion for me. It's a GP bowl with a spike up there in the middle. That's for putting an apple on. Something I'm told here in the US is a required object at this time of year. A seasonal object. I have, in fact, as you'll notice, I put a hole there in the base, which is really a vent hole to allow steam to escape, so that the knob thing there doesn't blow off in the bisque. And then I've got these sort of bowly dishes, and you might wonder what they are. They're actually quite thick and heavy, and they are going to be bisque fired, and they are what I call slops bowls for cleaning out when you clean out your wheel, or you can put the clay from your wheel into these bisqued bowls, which of course bisque is absorbent like plaster. This is really all in a roundabout way trying to get out of using plaster in the studio, and I had a load of clay that was sort of a mixture of bits and pieces, so I thought, well, I'll mix it all together, and then I'll throw these slops bowls. And so I've done that. They're not dry yet. They appear dry on the outside, but as we know, we're not fooled, are we, by just mere appearances, because I know for a fact those are not dry yet. They're going to need a lot longer, either on a stove or out in the sun. So another thing I've noticed is I've got a little bit of cracking here. Let me see if I can show you. I don't know if it's going to come up there, but I've got a little bit of cracking there just on the side where that handle is joining. That's because the bowls were a little bit too dry when I put the handles on. I have to watch myself. I'm quite often allowing things to get too dry. It's much better to put handles and things on when before they get too dry. You don't get this cracking problem. So that's that. That's just to update you with what I've been doing. What I'm going to do at the moment now, I'm going to set the camera here on the tripod. I'm going to get some light here on my wheel, like this. Because yeah, I've been making some chucks. How much chuck could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Yeah. Well, I've been making some chucks. Well, you might think, well, chucks, what are those? Well, this is a chuck here. Basically, a chuck is something that you bisque fire, and you center it up on the wheel head, and then you can trim a pot upside down, and it's basically something to hold a pot upside down when it can't go upside down directly on the wheel head because it's not stable. So you make a chuck to hold it, and then you just hold the chuck with pieces of clay, and that just nicely fits the. I've also got there a conical one. You can see there on the end, and then I've got here, this one is for, you might wonder what that's for. Let me just get down and show it to you a bit. You can see the shape of it. It's tapering, isn't it? Conical and tapering. Well, that is actually to round coffee mugs. So here I've got some coffee mugs. So basically the idea is when this is dry and it's been bisque fired, you can turn it upside down, you see, and the conical shape fits down inside the coffee mug. And the last thing you do when you've put the handle on and you've sealed it and it's on the bench, on the wearboard, you take the rounder, as we'll call it, the rounder, and you push it inside each mug like this, down along the board in turn, and that will make sure that they stay and dry round. Okay, that's quite important that they are round, isn't it? So that's what that is. It's a very slightly tapering. Okay, so they're very easy to make, and I recommend that if you don't have such a thing for rounding, to redondify. To redondify. I've got actually one more thing I wanted to make, which is just a small chuck. Sometimes if you make say a tea bowl and you want to trim it, then you don't necessarily want to invert the tea bowl and put it face down on the wheel head, especially if it's got a slightly wavy rim, because that damages it, doesn't it? So you want to hold it in such a way that the tea bowl is supported underneath at the bottom of the tea bowl. So I'm going to make a thing a little bit like a small fist, if you like, with a bigger head. So the tea bowl slips over the top, which does not allow the waviness of the rim to come in contact with the wheel head. So that's what I'm going to do now. So now I've made these before in the past, and I've pretty much made them out of just a solid lump of clay, but I'm thinking I'm going to, in fact, not do that in this case and throw it hollow. Partly, the reason I've done that is because I've not bothered to fire them. I've not bothered to bisque fire them, but I think with these ones I'm gonna bisque it. So I don't know what's going on, but I've got one of my knuckles here is sore. In certain operations that I'm doing, I'm suddenly going, ooh, ow. I've got this knuckle here is sore. I'm not quite sure why it is, what I've done to it. But you know, we do. If you injure yourself, you know, with your hands, for example, you know, you you perhaps need to switch doing things that you do with that hand and use your other hand to lighten the load, you know. I had tenosynovitis here in the tendon of my thumb, and it was through doing repeated movements of breaking into the clay, and I stretching and stretching this tendon until it basically got overworked, and that's what can happen with tenosynovitis. It becomes then very painful here around this area. You can't lift anything or do anything like that. And I eventually had to have a cortisone injection, and that cured it for me, fortunately. It doesn't do it for everybody though. Those tendon injuries, you want to watch out. If you're doing a lot of repeat throwing, repeat, you watch your hands, watch what's going on, because if you suddenly get a tendonitis, you really don't want that. So. Yeah, so as a result of that occurrence, I then started going into the clay with my thumb, but coming in with my hand as well. And I continue to do that to this day. So I'm not just going in like this all the time with my thumb, but I'm spreading the load using my other hand to assist. And that's what you really want to do. Okay, back to this guy. So you want to have him so he's got a reasonably wide foot, because that's what's going to be in contact with the wheel head. So I'm just going to make him a touch wider there. I'm going to collar him. So he's got kind of like a flared foot, a little stalk here, and raising up. And I'm going to close him over the top here. Although he's hollow inside, he's a little bit robustly made. You know, he's not wafer thin. Make him too wide across there. He's got to go down to the bottom of the pot. Okay, I think that's just about it. Yeah, maybe you're a person who's got a hand that hurts somewhere. Well, whoops, jagged it. Maybe you just need to swap over and use your left hand a bit for doing, or use your other hand for doing some of the things you usually use that particular hand for. It's a very manual, and anything that is manual where you're doing a lot of repeated actions, that kind of thing can happen. Alright, I've just sponged that off. I just wanted to give a shout out for one of my brothers, my brother Jeremy at the Lower Down Pottery in Devon, England. He's having a sale there. I think it's a half-price sale. So if you're in England listening to this, get along down to Devon to the Lower Down Pottery at Bobby Tracy, where Jeremy, my brother, is having a sale, half price. Okay, that'll do. So, there we are. Chucks. Chucks. So simple chucks, you see, they're useful for holding pots, for rounding pots, like this one I've just made, for what I've just done. Put in there. That's it. As they get a little bit leather hard, I'll probably true him up again on the wheel, so he's true. Yeah, and look after your hands. Don't overwork them. I've got to get my hand better now, because I've done something with this here and it's giving me a bit of pain, so keep practicing. See you in the next clip. Bye bye.